Thank you.
Meeting is being recorded.
All right. I just made it. I don't know why it won't stay as multiple participants. You can try it. I just unmuted.
Can anybody hear me through the speaker?
I can hear you.
Oh, yay. Okay, now we need to get you through the speaker. So keep talking, Nick.
Sure. Here, let me turn on my video.
No, doesn't that come through?
Can't see anything on your end, but I can hear you.
Just find it.
I can see Nick.
Oh, okay, that needs to go into the computer. That's why.
Yeah, mine's down here.
Okay, say something again, Nick.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Whoa. So you have to plug the speakers in.
Maybe those spot up.
It did. Are you ready for some slides?
I don't know. Are we gonna, you're gonna do your spiel?
Maybe you can get them loaded up.
Yeah, you can go ahead and give it to me. I'll get it loaded up and no, I can't. Cause I am out of.
Oh, yeah. one.
Oh, I do? Okay, never mind. I can. Yeah, we have a bunch of people who signed up to do this remotely. I mean, like 10 people or so. So I would just wait till 6:15.
Let them get a chance. to
Yeah,
find
but I told them to wait till 6:15.
Yeah, okay,
But
that's fine with me.
Whatever we do. Mushrooms.
Oh, I ordered the one just now.
you have a salad?
Yeah.
What kind?
So you get to pick whatever protein you want on top, and you can do it on a Caesar salad or a house salad. House salad is cheese, cucumbers, croutons, tomato, onion, and
House salad with chicken,
okay,
with Thousand Island on the side.
sounds good.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Okay, so Kris,
Yes,
is it the big Gade March 2023?
yeah, one's a PowerPoint and then one's a PDF that if you wanna have for afterward. Yeah, the big, yeah, wow, it's really big. Oh, that we can share? Yeah, that you can share. Might wanna make it smaller, the PDF is still, yes. Anyways. Didn't realize my pictures were so.
Right. I'm gonna start here, so I can under points, I can run your.
Oh, okay. Or can I sit there
You
where I
can sit
can
there,
see
yeah.
my speaker notes? Can we
Certainly.
set that up? Yeah.
I think so. So how do we
Or
do it so that they see the presentation, but I don't know how to do it so
oh,
that,
if it's just showing the screen, I'm not sure if that'll work.
so that would be the presentation.
Yeah, if we do it. There you go.
Oh, you do see
It
the,
works.
there we go.
Yeah. All right, perfect.
So yeah, you can.
Then I can just sit there.
Yeah,
and do-
absolutely.
Awesome. Perfect.
I'll go to that.
I'll grab my water. I put lots of links and stuff so people could
They're planning to write a lot about monarchs because they're on the official wildlife service list now.
mhm.
Every time we get a iPad list and we have to come up, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to.
Yeah, I wrote a little generic thing in our ADOT template for it, but yeah, we're gonna need a more
Yeah.
specific thing. Idaho DOT did a programmatic section 7 and they have a whole species description in there and stuff that I'm like, we're gonna steal that when it comes time, so. Yep, check it out, because they updated their programmatic like in 2022 and put it in there, so.
Yeah, you basically have to state why they're not. Pretty much.
Yeah. And that's what I just said for ADOT for the, well, I won't get into that much detail here, but for the conservation agreement, they said if you have 10% flowering plants, cover, that can be considered habitat. So that's what we're using right now. So, I mean, you have to draw a line somewhere, right? So, but yeah, you can count that as habitat you've created, but it also means then you have to think about it if you take that out and like, what are you gonna do? So.
But it's just, I mean, there's very specific plants that they use, right?
No, the
I'm
milkweed.
thinking of the,
Yeah, so the adults are general enough that they haven't yet, like nectar plants. So, and then the milkweed. But in the West, the nectar plants are just as important for them to move into landscape, so. Yeah, it's gonna be a thing. If they list it, for sure.
So I think we need to, here, let's,
Oh, should we?
no, you're fine. I just want to see how many people are here. So we have 5 participants, so just want to see how many people.
Keep monitoring, yes.
We should have like 9 or 10 people that wanted the paid to.
Do we need to like present the screen on Zoom when it restarts?
Yes, we will.
Oh, okay,
When you're ready to speak, we'll go back to the PowerPoint.
okay.
I just wanted to. And I also want to make sure nobody's emailing me saying I can't get in.
Yeah. Send you money.
So Nick's already on, so, okay.
I think we've got audio.
Okay.
Audio?
Yeah, I didn't mute it. Is Allison coming?
She said she's gonna try.
She paid.
So if I put Idaho DOT Monarch butterfly.
I don't know if it'll come up for, it's their programmatic section 7. Yeah, so, or if you go to their Iowa or Idaho DOT biology or environmental, you can find it from that. So, yeah.
Yes, this is probably, I'm gonna working on the third being that has one.
Mhm.
So.
Yep, I know.
And it's so general that it's.
Well, and that's the thing, like, yeah, Fish and Wildlife Services, until it's actually listed, they aren't, you know, putting a lot of resources out there, but yeah. Federal Highways says we need to address it in our documents if it's a candidate, so we just stuck it back there in the appendix and have a statement about it, but yeah.
What is on average, you just deal with a lot of different species or?
For ADOT?
Yeah.
We have kind of a common list that we, you know, deal with a lot, you know, bridges, and then you've got flycatchers and yellow-billed cuckoos and the various fish of the area, garter snakes and then we have different cacti that'll be in the right of way at times, Arizona hedgehog or Pima pineapple cactus, so.
We just had a presentation last month from Monarch County engineers on the
Mhm.
all the phases that they've gone through. It was a
Yep.
very good presentation. I unfortunately we had some, but it was.
I know I saw that and I wished I could go, but I had other things that night, but
I
yeah.
have the slides.
I did look through the slides online, yeah.
And if you get on to their website, the Toronto Bridge project has some real.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Mercy, hi, how are you?
You look great.
Well, we're gonna need.
Good to see you. Yeah, I do too. We were saying we gotta get lunch and now it's dinner, so.
Yeah, it's well, you know, whatever works. So here, I actually live really close to here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What part of town are you in?
Right down by Reed Park area, the Alvernon and Fifth.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I did not fully account for traffic.
All my phones off.
Yeah.
Are we gonna move our annual meeting to the national meeting? Is it the plan?
So.
For August.
You still got the dogs?
One dog, one cat.
We would need.
Yeah. Yeah. You too?
Like I was planning on about a year ago.
Oh.
Okay, I'm going to have my son's dog starting tomorrow for a while, so.
Can you take my mouse and just, let's see, can you go participate, how many participants? 6?
Yes, 7.
All right, so I think we should be getting a couple more at least.
And,
My grandson is now 12.
oh my gosh.
And
he is
taller than me, not that you- That's a big surprise.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
why I'm back.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
I typically have grandson duty on Thursdays.
Uh-huh.
I'll pick him up from school because he's into rock climbing. And so I pick him up at Orange Grove Middle School, bring him to my house, and then we go to the rocks and ropes over by the Costco in Orange Grove.
Oh, cool. That sounds fun. Do you climb too? I'm not-
No, actually, I actually think it'd be fun.
Uh-huh. I think it would be too, but I'm a little bit chicken, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's that part. I mean, some of the stuff you gotta do, I'm just like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
God. So
Mercy, do you want?
am I supposed to order something? or what am I-
Waitress will be in just a minute. I have a seat back here.
Do you want to
You stay there.
Okay,
Yeah, you stay there. There's.
And then Jennifer, you need to get on the mic.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're, I think we're off. We shouldn't be on mute.
no,
Okay.
we're, should I,
No, you have to leave it.
okay, leave it, okay.
I just
I guess
wonder.
All right, we're gonna get started. Thank you guys all for coming. It's like we have a pretty good turnout. Emily? That's six.
9.
Nine?
David and I am.
All right, great. We have a couple here. So let's do some quick introductions. My name is Jennifer Jennings. And it's weird not having anybody to talk to.
Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Jennings. I'm an environmental planner with Spirit Right of Way Services, and I'm the president of ADOT. And we'll just go around the room here and do some quick introductions, and then we'll jump online. And you guys can introduce yourselves. Can you all hear me well enough online?
Yeah, we can hear you pretty well. I can.
How do we say you last?
Okay.
You wanna go?
David McIntyre, I am the secretary of AZAE and I work for McIntyre Environmental.
Susie Morales with Recon Environmental, vice president of the ADA. And forget what I am. Just to help Jennifer. So, yeah, looking forward to this. So.
And she was a little further back in the room.
We get Sarah. 16.
Nick?
Wait, did you say me?
Susie was a little further back in the room. Are you still able to hear her on the microphone?
You trailed off a little on the end, but I caught the first part. Well, for doing me next, I'm Nick Brazier. I'm with SWCA. I'm an environmental planner and the treasurer of our chapter.
All right, thank you, Nick. We have one more here.
Like there's Darcy Anderson with Westland Resources.
You know, I can't see who's on screen, so.
Amber?
Would you like to introduce yourself?
There she is.
She put it in the chat.
Oh. Should I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Amber Huntoon Colvin, Headway Environmental, previously known as Commonwealth ACS. Environmental Scientist Project Manager. So I'm reading that for Amber. It was in the chat.
Thank you, Amber.
Lindsay?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Bradshaw. I'm with SWCA Consultants as well, a project biologist out of our Phoenix office.
Nancy Favor?
Hi, guys. I'm Nancy Favor. I work at the BLM state office in Phoenix, and I'm a NEPA planner. And I'm at-large board member.
Angela?
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Muzinski. I'm a senior wildlife biologist and senior Clean Water Act permitting specialist for Logan Simpson.
Alexandra?
Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra Pramar. I'm a biologist with Logan Simpson based out of the Flagstaff office.
Vivian? We're not hearing you, Vivian. Still not, Tyler, do you want to go? Hopefully Vivian will. Vivian, you can put it in chat if you'd like. Tyler? Tibbetts? Maybe he stepped away. I mean, that's everybody.
That's everybody?
Yeah,
Okay.
those two didn't speak.
David did send out an agenda to everybody, and I'll just go over it kind of briefly. I'm not gonna be able to put it up on our screen. If you want to find out more information about our group, when we meet, or even to pay for meetings online, you can do that at azae.org. So go check it out over there. Brief recap of our membership. We have currently 252 members. And that includes 207 under a corporate membership. So we have right now 16 companies that are under a corporate membership. And the company pays $150 a year to be a corporate member. And that allows for an unlimited number of their employees to attend our meetings at the membership price, which is a pretty good deal. And it also gives those organizations an opportunity to post job listings to our website. David is constantly updating our website with job announcements. So take a look over there. If you're looking for a job, or you know somebody who's interested, again, that's azaep.org. You'll find out that information. We also have student memberships. The student membership is free, and the in-person meetings are just $10 and include the dinner. We are really interested in growing our student membership. So if you know any students, pass the word along. We'd love to have more of them attend. Membership forms are also found online at azaep.org. We have so some of our upcoming meeting events. In April, we have speaker Jenny Neely, who's the program manager for Pima County Office of Sustainability and Conservation. And she'll be speaking about Pima County's MSCP certificate of coverage. And tentatively, did we say we're bringing that back? Tentatively, that will be in Tucson. I know on the agenda it says that it will be in Tempe at Boulders on Broadway, but we're big because Jenny is local to Tucson, that we'll have that be a Tucson meeting. May, we're not going to have a membership meeting because it is the National Conference and Training Symposium. NAEP is having their conference in Phoenix in May, and AZAEP is hosting that event. So please spread the word to anybody who's interested in attending. We'd like to really have a good showing and show off our state. If you have any questions about it, I know Susie, David, myself, Nick, Nancy, we're all on the planning committee, and you can answer any questions you may have. In June, we have our very own Nick, who's going to be presenting on the differences between state, local, and federal permitting processes for renewable energy facilities in Arizona. And that one will be up in Tempe. July, our speaker is going to be with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who will be talking about their environmental compliance process and an overview of HUD's NEPA implementing regulations. And he'll also discuss environmental compliance factors that are problematic and specific to Arizona. That will also be in Tempe. That's Stanley Toll. August, we are probably going to come back down to Tucson for Courtney Rose, who's with the Cultural Resources Program at Pima County's Office of Sustainability and Conservation. And she'll be talking about Pima County land management in regards to cultural resources, site steward monitoring, and land planning. And that one said it's going to be better, right? Isn't it? So, which brings us to
The scholarship for ADOT, you mentioned that.
oh
We have 4 people who have
yes.
asked to be.
Thank you. Okay, so something that we're doing to help members attend the national conference is we're offering a lottery for 2 $250 scholarships. We're calling it a scholarship. All you need to do is send your name in to azaep@azaep.org. And you can self-nominate. And what we do want the award money to go towards the conference, so we're asking that in order to receive the money, that you provide us some sort of documentation that you have registered for the conference. So there's two $250 awards, and I don't have the date for that. I think we said April 10th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have until April 10th to apply for that. I think in the morning and then in the afternoon, we're going to select the 2 winners. So we currently have 4, so everybody has a really good shot right now. And that gives you time to register for the conference if you haven't already, prior to the late registration fees. Okay, did I read anything? Right. Now, we're going to move on to one of our favorite speakers, Kris Gade, from the Arizona Department of Transportation, who will be talking about monarch butterfly conservation and ADOT's approach. Take it away, Kris.
All right, well, thank you. I'm excited to be back at AZAP. It's been a little while. So I'm Kris Gade. I am the Assistant Environmental Administrator now over the Biology, Cultural Resources, and Water teams at ADOT. And today I'm going to talk to you about something that I've been working on at ADOT for quite a while, monarch butterfly conservation. But not just what ADOT's doing, but just generally how voluntary conservation efforts by both individuals and agencies can make a difference at the landscape scale. And let's see, there we go. So there's been a lot of bad news about insect populations in recent years. There's been large declines in populations in a lot of different types of insects, ranging from bumblebees to butterflies. And these have been attributed to a bunch of different factors that mostly tie back to loss of available habitat and resources for feeding and breeding. So today I'm going to focus on monarch butterflies, but the actions that benefit monarchs also benefit many other insects and pollinators. So monarch butterflies are really familiar, widespread, and have an amazing migratory cycle that has captured our attention long enough that there's a fairly long-term data set. So this graph that's up right now shows the area of overwintering habitat occupied in Mexico. So it's measured in hectares because this is a really large population, migration. All the butterflies in the US are one population, but there's about 30 million butterflies that currently participate in the Eastern migration. And these data sets go back to 1993. And then for the Western migration, that's only about 335,000 butterflies. And we have data on that back to 1997 from where actually counting the butterflies where they overwinter on the coast of California. So as you can see, both of the populations have dropped since the counting started back in the 90s, or the measuring of the area where they overwinter for the Eastern migration. We've seen a good improvement in the Western numbers after a really scary drop a few years ago. But things are not looking as good for that much larger Eastern migration. So another thing that makes monarchs so unique and kind of a charismatic insect, if you will, instead of megafauna, is their life cycle and the long migration that they go through. So this shows the overall migration of monarchs with the large Eastern population moving between Mexico and up into Canada, and then the Western population moving between the Pacific coast and the Rocky Mountains. And then when we get into looking at Arizona specifically, we have really interesting pattern here that about half of the monarchs that have been tagged in Arizona have been recovered, or almost exactly half have been recovered in California and half in Mexico. So we're an interesting area where some mixing of those two migrations may be going on, which is why they aren't genetically different. They're all still considered one population. And so there's still work we can do for figuring out what's going on with the monarchs. And so just this really cool widespread presence of these butterflies and just the sheer numbers make this a really focal species. So as I said, the life cycle of the monarch and that so many people have seen them in their own yards or at school also contributes to how popular, how widespread the regard is for the species. And so here I'll show off. Here's a monarch in my backyard that I was lucky enough to watch go from a caterpillar into making its chrysalis and then eclosing from its chrysalis and as an adult butterfly. And so one of the important aspects of monarch biology is that they only lay their eggs on milkweed, and the caterpillars only eat milkweed until they form the chrysalis. And then the adult butterflies feed on nectar from all kinds of blooming plants as they move around the landscape. So that leads to what are the threats that have been identified to monarchs. And it ties back to loss of milkweed and flowering plants across their range, and different reasons for that, including large-scale agriculture that doesn't necessarily leave the weedy edges with milkweed presence and other blooming plants anymore, drought and increasing temperatures, and then just land development. And then also loss of the overwintering groves in California and Mexico, both for logging and development into other uses, and widespread use of pesticides, insecticides that are used on seeds or directly, and then also herbicides that result in a loss of habitat resources. So the drop in the numbers is concerning enough that the monarch was petitioned for listing under the Endangered Species Act, and Fish and Wildlife Service reviewed them and determined that they do warrant listing back in December 2020. That was their decision, but they precluded doing an immediate listing due to other higher priority species, and they scheduled to make a formal decision for fiscal year 2024. At the same time, they emphasize that there are a lot of opportunities for voluntary conservation to protect and support monarchs, and that could play into their decision on whether to list it or not. So currently, I've heard from several different sources, the listing decision is most likely going to come out in November 2023. And if that is a positive decision to list it, that means that with the usual 12 months to a final rule and 1 month for it to be effective, we're looking at December 2024. So as the number of monarchs numbers were decreasing, a lot of researchers were looking around for the possible causes for decline. And one of the papers that came out of it included an estimation of how much milkweed would be needed to support the monarch population in the Midwest, and what are possible ways to get there. And the result of that was this paper that's called All Hands on Deck. And that based on that paper, the Midwest Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies released a conservation strategy for those states in 2018, and then the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife agencies released one for the Western states in 2019. They both identify actions that different groups can take to conserve butterflies, and one of the categories that they are looking at are rights of way. So why are rights of way important for monarch butterflies and other pollinators? And yes, these are ADOT roads. So there's a lot of land available outside the operational area of the right of way. So the Federal Highway Administration did some research on carbon storage potential or carbon sequestration potential. And in that report, they did an estimate that there's about 5 million acres of right-of-way in the national highway system, which is the part that's shown in blue here. So that's just, that's not the full highway system or even thinking about all the county and local roads there are. So this is just a subset. And DOTs maintain a lot more than just the national highway system. And within that report, they looked at how much was unpaved and estimated about 68% of it's unpaved. So that right there is 3.4 million acres of vegetation. And not all of that, most of that is not needed for operational uses. So it can be used to support pollinators in some of the areas. And the way that vegetation management for rights of way has evolved over time is we tend to manage with a lot of native plants, especially here in Arizona, that we keep in early successional habitat. So lower stature plants, both grasses and blooming plants. And that is ideal pollinator habitat. But if the way we manage our vegetation means we're creating great habitat for species that are about to potentially be listed under the Endangered Species Act, that's kind of a catch-22 for agencies to navigate in terms of, we want to help conserve the species, but if we draw them to our right-of-way, then there will be more regulation on us. And so part of dealing with that was addressed through ADOT. I participate with the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group, and that group came together to look at options to address that kind of conundrum, that there were these agencies with lots of habitat available, but these mixed feelings about using it for conservation. And so we joined in with this group to develop the first actually nationwide candidate conservation agreement with assurances. So it covers all of the lower 48 states. And it focuses on voluntary actions that can be enacted through vegetation management on rights of way and associated parcels. It's for both transportation and energy rights of way. And basically the agencies or companies can apply to receive coverage under the Endangered Species Act permit, as long as they demonstrate, or they're required to demonstrate, that the actions they're taking will result in a net benefit to monarch butterflies. So basically, if operational actions are needed to maintain the right-of-way safely, but additional habitat is being protected that outweighs that, and there's a net benefit, then you can apply and get coverage under this Section 10 permit for the Endangered Species Act. So this map here shows states where there's already some enrolled acres, and I'm hoping to have Arizona turn green pretty soon here. All right, and so this is just to show that more than 40 partners came together to make up the CCAA task force. It was a real mix of departments of transportation and energy companies, and then other partners and experts, with sponsorship from the Federal Highway Administration and supporting a liaison at the Fish and Wildlife Service in order to get the agreement developed. So a little bit more specific to ADOT, we have 7,000 center line miles in the state highway system. That adds up to over 200,000 acres, including all of our right-of-way, the other parcels in Grand Canyon Airport. In Arizona, monarch butterflies are present in different parts of the state during different times of the year because of the elevational changes. Some even overwinter in the low desert areas. So that's something we're going to have to figure out. And so we want to join the conservation agreement because it's going to help us document our conservation efforts, which can help with maybe not listing or listing as threatened rather than endangered, and also streamline our endangered Species Act compliance for our maintenance and our construction, so some of our construction activities. So the main ways that ADOT can help conserve monarch and pollinator habitat is by reducing mowing, both the frequency and the amount of lands that we're mowing. And when we do mow or use herbicide, to make sure that is happening when, to the extent practicable, butterflies are not there or caterpillars are not there. And then again, to continue to plant our native seed mixes, which ADOT has used all native plants since the mid-90s. So we have a lot of good things to build on there. And then we wanted to identify the most important habitat areas where we might do some additional enhancement. All right, so in terms of identifying habitat, we worked on some milkweed suitability modeling. There was an existing model for monarchs and milkweeds in the western states that was built on this data set you see here on the slide from the Western Monarch Milkweed Mapper. So this is somewhere that people can report sightings of milkweed and monarchs, and it becomes part of this database that you can see online, which is really fun. And so the DILTS and others in 2019 published a paper using some species of milkweed that are kind of widespread across the western states. And so I looked at that and I could tell that it wasn't fully representative of what we see in Arizona. We have a lot of different species of milkweed that are in some smaller distributions. And so we partnered with the Arizona Game and Fish to create an Arizona model that has finer spatial resolution and included some additional Arizona milkweed species. And then I also wanted to be able to kind of refine it so that it was easy to use for us for planning along roadsides. And the main goals were to figure out what areas we really wanted to conserve, but also areas that are not habitat. So we're not focusing on areas that aren't as important. And then to figure out specific, really high priority areas for enhancements. So the model that is very close to being final has 10 species of milkweed included. And these are all the pictures. You can see we have quite a diversity of types of milkweed in the state. We picked these 10 out of there's about 30 that occur in Arizona. We picked these 10 based on both availability of the data, and also ones that are known to host monarchs as caterpillars that the monarchs tend to lay eggs on. And then after we picked the species and did a first cut of the model, we got some feedback from the Arizona Monarch Collaborative and the Western Monarch Working Group. We used data that we used the Maxent type modeling, maximum entropy. That's a machine learning algorithm that uses presence only data and then the environmental value covariates to predict where the species distributions and habitat suitability. And so that allowed us to use a bunch of different data sets from citizen science and other sources like iNaturalist, the Western Monarch Milkweed Mapper, and the Global Biodiversity Information. I forget the GBIF, that which consolidates a bunch of federal data as well. And so this is the results. So along the bottom, you see the individual species models for those 10 different species at the 90-meter resolution. And then we developed 2 statewide models by taking a cell-by-cell average of those. So this one that's showing on the screen right now is the higher elevation species models. So that's 8 species there. And then we separated it because these 2 low elevation species were not showing up at all. And so we wanted to find the 2 best, the best places to conserve. So we needed to separate out these lower elevation species models. So Arizona Game and Fish, especially Haley Nelson, did this modeling, and we are working with them to get it posted on Have a Map sometime soon. We don't know exactly how long that's going to take, but it is in the works. And then we did one additional step, which was to then extract that data and so that we could look at it for planning on the roads. And so use our linear referencing system to do that. This gives an example, but it's based on our old model that didn't show the low elevation species very well in the averaging. So we use the centerline data to average out those values. And then we also went in and took out pavement areas and other areas of no vegetation so that we could get a better idea of really what our acres are that are possible for conservation use. So that's what ADOT's doing right now. We're working on applying to the conservation agreement in the next few months. And implementing a bunch of updates and tweaks to our vegetation management scheduling and things like that. But I also want to talk a little bit about the things that everybody can do to help monarchs and pollinators. And I want to highlight that there is this Arizona Monarch Collaborative, which is basically a group that's trying to help coordinate conservation efforts for our state in alignment with the Western Monarch Butterfly Conservation Plan. And so if you go, I have the link later, but if you go to that page, it has a lot of information gathered that's Arizona specific and helpful. And there's a monthly newsletter with a lot of good information there. And then there's a lot of several national organizations that provide information on monarchs. So Monarch Joint Venture and the Xerces Society both have a lot of great resources, just general information. And then Journey North and the Western Monarch Milkweed Mapper are both places where you can go in and report sightings of monarchs. Journey North tracks it by date to see where they're getting to across the country each week. And then the Western Monarch Milkweed Mapper is you can report where you see milkweed, and it can go into that data set that's used for these models. Reporting to iNaturalist too works. Those are all that people pull from all these data sets in order to do models and things like that. And then, so there's a couple state-specific monarch organizations that I wanted to highlight. One is the Arizona Monarch Collaborative. The other, this is a super great research resource, the Southwest Monarch Study. This is Gail Morris runs this, and she has all kinds of information on tagging. And if you want to learn to put those stickers on the butterflies, she keeps track of all those tags, sends them out, and collects the data, matches it up so we can see where things start and where they end up. And then this is just my page of links for you. Basically, if you want to create monarch habitat at home or at work or a community location, there's a ton of resources out there with suggestions on plant choices and places to go buy them. And so I just wanted to share all those links, and these slides will be available afterward. And then finally, I think I mentioned you can report data. There's a few different types of projects where you can report, do the monarch larva monitoring project. So if you have caterpillars in your backyard, you can track how long it takes for them to get to different stages and turn into a butterfly. The Nature's Notebook, the Desert Botanical Garden, has a really cool project called Desert Refuge that I track the monarchs and milkweeds in my backyard and report it through their phone app. And then also, as I said, the Southwest Monarch Study does the tagging and can teach you and send you tags to mark the monarchs. And I just really want to encourage people, every little bit of habitat that we can put out there is going to benefit them, and every bit of data that you want to collect. So if you're a nerd like me and you like to go see if your milkweed's flowering or look for caterpillars, then you can share it and and people will learn more about it and how we can help increase their numbers. And that's it. There's my information. And then I also put a link to the ADOT roadside resources webpage if you want to look at more about how ADOT's doing vegetation management. Yeah.
I have the first question.
Yes, Darcy.
So the candidate conservation agreement with insurance
Uh-huh.
is ADOT, well, and the other departments. They're looking at that as sort of a safe harbor agreement that may protect them when it becomes listed, let's just say it that way.
Yeah, so it is basically, it's very similar to a safe harbor agreement, except it's with the candidate part. You can only join it before the species is actually listed while it's still a candidate species. So that, and actually Fish and Wildlife Service has rules out right now for comment where they're going to combine and not separate anymore the candidate conservation agreements and the safe harbor agreements. They're going to turn them all into voluntary conservation and not make that distinction in the future. So, yeah.
Do you anticipate having to retrain your roadside maintenance crews to not just whack everything down?
Yes, and that's an ongoing process that we've been doing for a while, so that we, I was actually working on developing those vegetation management guidelines about the time in 2017-ish, about the time we started working on the conservation agreement. And so a lot of what we already have as our guidelines are in line with what will help, but it also, we have to refine them to focus on monarchs and not just reseeding of our natives. And yeah, roll it out. We have some districts doing it already and others where we're still doing the training and setting up schedules. So
What's the lifespan of a?
that's a really good one. So probably about 6 weeks when they're in that migrating phase. So when when it's warm and they emerge as a butterfly, they will be immediately in their reproductive phase, which takes a lot of energy. And so they're flying around, they're mating and laying eggs, and they live about 6 weeks as they migrate. Then that last generation in the fall that heads to the overwintering, they don't go into their reproductive phase immediately. At lower temperatures, they stay pre-reproductive basically, and they can live 4 or 5 months. So they live a while, and then as it warms up, they go into the reproductive phase, and they're that first generation and create that first generation. So it's really amazing. And how do they have, a butterfly closes in Texas and then knows to fly north, and then the next one flies north, and then one decides it's time to head to Mexico. So yeah. They think it's sun angle and some temperature things, but yeah.
How far can they go migrate during their lifespan, distance wise?
A lot of it, I think, depends on, they go up and they hit air currents, and that takes them farther, so weather can affect it. But I mean, they're going 1,000 miles, maybe.
6 weeks. 5, 6
It's
weeks.
Do we have questions online?
I have a question.
okay.
So my perception is that.
Did I turn it off? Oh, I messed it up, I think. Oh no, did I disconnect it?
I just see the screen, I just
Okay.
show that, the speakers.
Speaker's on.
It is?
Yeah.
It's not moving, okay.
Y'all are good. We can still hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So my perception is that milkweed occurs potentially everywhere, and that everywhere is monarch habitat.
So milkweed is super patchy in the West. And so actually, so we did some ground truthing of that model in 2 ADOT districts last summer. And so we went out and we tried to hit 20 sites in high, medium, and low suitability. And, you know, some of them we couldn't stop at or whatever, but we checked like 15 highs and we had in those locations, 30% of them had milkweed in the high suitability that were randomly selected to go check. They all had 20+ species of nectar plants at the high suitability, and the mediums, none of the mediums had milkweed. They all had like about 20 species of nectar plants too. So far our model for in those 2 districts is great for predicting the nectar diversity in the medium and high categories, and the high, you do have a chance of milkweed, and the low, we weren't finding very good
So
diversity.
once this is listed,
Mhm.
and then we're having to deal with section 7,
Mhm.
what is going to be driving whether or not you have to do some kind of formal or informal consultation? Is it going to be the potential presence of milkweed based on the high suitability, and then you have to go out and survey that, and then maybe medium and low, you're like,
So
survey that, or how's that?
Yeah. a lot of it will depend on what they put in the listing, right? I'm anticipating it'll be listed as threatened if they decide to do the listing, which means they still have that option to do the 4D rule, and they can say only these types of take or these types of activities are prohibited. And so that's one way that they may cut down on. Not everything will have to have a section 7 or a section 10 permit. And then the other thing is we kind of have a preview from the candidate conservation agreement where for the east, they defined you had to have a minimum number of milkweed stems to count as habitat, as conserved habitat back there. So it was like, I think 6 stems per hectare. Whereas in the west, it was 2 stems of milkweed per hectare or 10% nectar cover. So they make a distinction if you go in there and look at that.
Lindsay has a question on the mic.
Lindsay?
Yes. Hi, Chris. For starters, love the presentation. I actually was able to see you at the Monarch Butterfly Conference. So it was really nice to see this expanded upon. I had so many questions. You had mentioned that ADOT does have some native seed mixes that they've had for quite some time. Would those be available to, say, clients that might be interested in creating some of this habitat on maybe solar areas where they've already been constructed, things of that nature? Would that be available to clients, or is that just kind of more of an in-house mix?
Well, they are done in-house as special provisions for each of our contracts, but we can share them. They're mixes of 20 to 25 species, and they are tailored on each one as a special provision because the availability isn't always there, right? So we'll start with what we plan for the list, but then when we go, they'll check with the seed suppliers to see what's actually available and adjust them. So we don't have just a standard that goes out, but if you have a project and they're also tailored to each of the biotic communities within Arizona. So if you wanted to contact me and say, can you pull a seed list for something that's near this area, I could probably do that from the most recent construction project we had there, but we don't have something that we can just publish because.
Okay. Right. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Are there any other questions from those of you online?
Oh, I just saw one, Alexandra.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for a great presentation. I like learning about what ADOT is doing. As part of the candidate conservation agreement with assurances, are you folks doing controlled studies in the areas where you are implementing changes to your vegetation management practices to see, any positive results from that through time, or just any results?
Are you doing, you're a little garbled or muffled. You're wondering if ADOT is doing any kind of controlled studies in areas where they are.
Yeah, changing. Can you hear me better now? I'm sorry. where you're implementing changes to your vegetation management practices as part of the candidate conservation agreement with assurances.
Oh, okay, I think
Like
I,
monitoring.
yeah, so, the ground truthing we did last year was actually testing out the protocol that we would use for monitoring. But we were just testing, we did not do the piece where we looked at what type of mowing or spraying had happened and whether it happened at the right time. So we were using our monitoring protocol, which the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group has a protocol online called the Pollinator Scorecard. And we were trying that out. Once we join, then we will be picking random locations in the areas that we consider enrolled acres that are conservation and monitoring those to ensure that it's habitat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online? Any other questions here?
I actually have one that, you know, you showed the map of the United States that are actually Monarch in Alaska or Hawaii.
No, they're not included. So just the lower 48. Yep.
Wow.
I have a question. Hey, Kris, did you tag your butterfly in your yard?
No, I haven't gotten brave enough to do any tagging.
Be afraid that I would crush the little.
I know
thing.
you have to grab them and then there's a certain spot that you stick that sticker on where the wing veins are
Yeah.
strong, but I haven't had the actual training to do it yet. Gail keeps telling me, Kris, if you're tracking those monarchs, you got to start tagging, but I haven't yet. So hopefully this fall I will start doing it because I only had one last year and I had 3 over the winter, which was really unusual for them to be closed in the winter. So, yeah.
I need to get more of them. But that's three little milkweeds in there.
Now that mine have started throwing out their seeds and naturalizing, now that's my number of monarchs is going up. And I have 3 monarch caterpillars in my backyard right now. So one's getting ready to go make its chrysalis. So this is what I do every day. Much. Yes.
So I live on the southwest side of town, and it just occurred to me, there's a lot of bubble grass,
Mhm,
so they're having to deal with the bubble grass, but
Mhm.
within the bubble grass, there's water plants.
mhm.
So how is there, do you have to treat bubble grass when it's
Mhm.
possible? So there is overlap between flowering plant and bubble grass.
Mhm.
So how are,
So that is part of the reason that ADOT wants to join the candidate conservation agreement is because what you have to demonstrate is a net benefit. So that allows you to do that kind of operational, management of the vegetation that you need to do, but demonstrate that you are providing that at least that much habitat is what you're disturbing to manage, plus additional 5 to 8% of your right of way. And so that's how you meet the requirements of the permit.
and presumably, if you can get rid of the bubble grass, flowering plants.
Then you'll be creating more, but the year that you treat it, you are potentially, it's not as likely that monarchs are laying their eggs if the milkweed is hidden in the buffalo grass, but they could. And so, and definitely vegetation management is going to be one of the activities that is going to be in effect, right? So we know we're managing this stuff. We need to figure out a way to do this. And they already did an internal Section 7 consultation when they issued or signed the CCAA. So that means that ADOT, it's also going to save us a lot of compliance effort because we'll be able to say this is already programmatically approved under Section 7. And so we will not have to do a Section 7 consultation on every project that removes flowering plants. And that is a huge risk for us. And so it'll depend on the listing, how it's going to affect other industries and other.
One last thing. Sorry. Where do you get your?
Where do I get it? Well, okay, so if you go to the Southwest Monarch
Yeah.
study, she has a great list of nurseries on there of where you can get the plants and the seeds. I go to Spadefoot, I go to the botanical gardens. They all grow it out and don't use pesticides on it. And so those are the best, are the native plant nurseries. And then once you know people who are growing it, they have seeds. So I have a lot of, I should have brought some tonight. I collect all kinds of seeds and share those around. So, yeah.
Does it start completely from seed? Like, can you do it in your backyard? Cause I've grown so many seeds in my backyard of various.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of luck trying to start it myself and germinate it. But, you know, I've had it in my backyard now 3 years. And now I have tons of little patches of it coming up of different types. So, so yeah, once you get it going, it's pretty good. Especially the Arizona milkweed, the angustifolia, which is the one the monarchs seem to really, really like. The desert milkweed or the rush milkweed looks really cool, but that one, I have them, they grow a while and then they just die, you know, and I haven't really had them reseed. So, but I have had a monarch on it, lay eggs on it. So
I have one question. So you do a net benefit, is that across your whole system? Is it per project or how is that?
across your whole system. So you decide what amount or area you're enrolling. ADOT's going to enroll our entire right of way because we want section 7 coverage across the whole thing. But we have to have that net benefit again across that whole thing. So if all of our best habitat is in 3 districts, we may really focus our conservation efforts there. Although what I want to do is identify the best ones in each of our 7 districts and have each district have areas that they're going to do. But we haven't gotten to the point, you know, we're starting with a couple districts and analyzing the others as we go. So.
Anyone else? Anyone online? Questions?
I did have a quick, one more quick question for Kris. So this might be a little too much of a deep dive, so I apologize if that is the situation. Just the question with buffalo grass, as it were, have you noticed at any point where maybe wildfires, particularly in areas with buffalo grass, have been causing a lot of issues with degradation of habitat, destruction of habitat, or, you know, any threats to that, to the monarch specifically, or has that been, you know, less of a concern?
Well, control of invasive species is a conservation measure under the conservation agreement, because when you get those really dense stands of these species that aren't flowering, you don't get milkweed, you don't get as much nectar. So in that regard, just basically displacement of native plant habitat is a negative effect. And then, yeah, there can be fires from it as well. And that's a safety concern as well for ADOT. So, you know, if you have a really dense stand of buffalo grass and you spray herbicide on it, you're not likely to be hurting a monarch at that point. But, you know, so that can also be considered a net benefit, that treatment of the invasive species. So.
Okay, thank you.
Last call. All right, well, let's all thank Kris for coming.
Yeah.
Always a great presentation when you come, and thank you guys online for joining us. We appreciate it. And we will see you next month.
Here, right?
Yes.
So we got a lot of thank yous, Kris, from the notes for the chat. Really great, really enjoyed it. Thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
Here, let me look this up.
That was fun. I always love talking about butterflies. Get me going forever.
That was really good.